Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yater Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, The Forward Corporation, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Hammond Drives and Equipment, Garber Chevrolet, the West Branch Visitors Bureau, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome. Welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show, right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network, on 30 radio stations across this great state of Michigan. And so glad to have you along with us as we continue this journey, this celebration of the outdoor lifestyle, the history and tradition of the outdoors here in our great state of Michigan. And for many of you listening, your family traditions as well. I do hear, though, from people quite often. In fact, last night I was at Costco. Somebody stopped me and said, "Hey, Mike, I'm not a hunter. I'm not an angler. I don't really, I don't do much outdoors, but I like to listen to your show. I enjoy your show. I learn from it. I hear you talk about interesting topics." And that, I have to be honest, is probably the biggest compliment I can get, is that people who are not firmly ensconced in this outdoor lifestyle, like many of us are, still find the show interesting. So thank you. Thank you for that. And if you are hardcore, hook and pull it, hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping and everything else, man, I'm glad to have you along with us as well. So deer season now is kind of winding down, right? The muzzleloader season, in quotes, is over. I don't think it'll be much longer now before that season gets another name, like, second rifle season or whatever they're going to call it. We all know at this point, at least in the Lower Peninsula, that muzzleloader season is no longer muzzleloader season. That was a tool given to us by the DNR to try to increase the harvest. I say, if you want to give us a tool to increase the harvest, let hunters use bait again, but I don't want to get off topic there. But that's a topic. That is a subject that is not going to go away. The legislature continues to hammer away at that. Hunters continue to hammer away at that. I would not be surprised if sometime in the next couple of years we don't see some changes to the bait laws in the Lower Peninsula. But those changes might not be initiated by the DNR. They might come from outside the DNR, and the DNR just be forced to go along with it. They can't bring it up, and they certainly can't back a bait license because they would lose all credibility, and they're not about to do that. So it looks like, as I'm here in the studio today, it's actually a little bit warmer. I'm looking at the forecast for the next few days, and I think we got a little break in the weather. And man, is that welcome. I mean, holy cow. I felt like it was the first week of February in 1978 lately. Now, if you weren't around in 1978, that was a real winter. But I feel like we've kind of had a real winter so far, at least off to an early start. There is some good ice across the state. Check your local water before you head out there. Don't be the first person out there. Don't go out there based on Avery's suggestion. Go out there with a spud, chunk your way along, chunk, chunk, chunk. The old-timers have tested the ice with a spud for years and years. Why? Because it's probably the best way to test the ice and make sure that it is safe. I will not be rushing to get on the ice. In fact, I was talking to James, my son James, the other day, and he said, "Hey, you have an open invitation to go back out on Saginaw Bay walleye fishing with us." And us is my son James and his good friend, now my friend as well, Mike Smith of Offshore Account Fishing. Mike runs ice fishing charters as well. And I did go out with those guys one time last year, and I have to be honest, I enjoyed it. Did I enjoy it enough to do it a bunch of times? Not really, but I enjoyed it. And I get the appeal of ice fishing. In fact, tentatively, I have scheduled for next week Jake Romanek of the Fishing 411 TV show, who likes ice fishing more than anybody I know. I mean, this guy he's in northern Minnesota right now as we speak, doing a couple of TV shows. I mean, the guy loves ice fishing, so I want to talk with him about that and see what that mindset is all about. So what's going on right now? We've got some great fishing, ice fishing, some pretty good steelhead fishing in the rivers as well. Trapping season is open. The late bow season is open. Rabbit, squirrel seasons are open. Predator hunting. Predator hunting is huge in our state now. A lot of people out hunting coyotes right now. The the December elk season, does that wrap up this weekend or not? I don't know, but we are either in the December elk season or have just wrapped up the December elk season. I posted a picture a couple of days ago of a guy who got a cow tag last year and successfully took a cow. Then this year, right? He gets a cow tag last year, and this year he wins the Pure Michigan hunt. So he gets a bull tag. And he goes out and legally harvests a bull. So in 2 years, the guy got 2 elk tags, and he took 2 animals, one of them being a bull. Well, my first thought is, that is so cool. Congratulations. A lot of people's thoughts were, oh, he must have cheated. He must have paid for those. He must know somebody in the system. The system must be corrupt. Why can we not just today be positive and congratulate our fellow hunters and anglers? I said this last week. I'm going to say it again, and I might say it for the next 100 weeks in a row. The biggest threat to hunting and fishing in the outdoor lifestyle today is not the antis. It is no longer the anti-hunters. It is us as hunters who cannot support our fellow hunters and anglers. And I'm sick of it. I have decided that after trying to be a good guy online for a while, and give people their say, let them have a little freedom, let them express their thoughts, it's like, I'm done with it. I am done with it. I'm going to go back to my original guidelines for all of my social media outlets. If I post something online, and it will be of a legal hunter or angler, I'm not going to knowingly post anything illegal. So just assume if you see it on my page, it is legal. If you come onto my page and you make a negative comment toward that activity, toward the harvest, toward the method of harvest, if it is snarky, if it is negative, if you are belittling that person, their harvest, or their method of harvest, your post will be deleted and you will be banned. Because I don't want anything to do with this. I am not going to be a part of this. I'm not going to be a part of this online movement to blow up the hunting community. Because that's what you're doing when you are negative like this. You're not proving what an expert you are. You're not proving how tough you are. You're proving that you don't have a sense of where we are in the hunting world today and that you don't care about the future of hunting. And I do, so I'm not going to be part of it. I mean, it's I think it's really gotten out of hand lately. It really has. What else? No more Wednesday night lives, or actually behind the mics, for 2025. Not going to do one for Christmas Eve. Not going to do one for New Year's Eve either. So look for the first Wednesday in January. We will start those back up. What else? Christmas. It shouldn't surprise me that it's Christmas already because it's been coming for 50 weeks. and the retailers and such have been pushing it for the last 2 months. And I've seen the Christmas stuff in the stores for 2 months, so it shouldn't surprise me. But it kind of snuck up on me this year. I understand because I got a grandson who's just over a year old. I got a new great-granddaughter who doesn't get what Christmas is yet, but she will. I get it, that for the kids, we have to look at Christmas from a certain prism, a certain perspective, and that is Santa Claus and Christmas trees and presents and reindeers and Rudolph and all that stuff. I get that completely. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that at all. But I would say, and I would encourage you, that through all of this Christmas celebration, all of this shopping, all of this online shopping, all of this cooking, all of this baking, all of this preparation, all this having people over to the house, that you keep in mind what the real reason for Christmas is. And it's not to squeeze a fat Santa Claus down a chimney. The real reason for Christmas, the real message behind Christmas, and I come at this from a certain perspective as a Christian man, the real reason for Christmas is the birth of a Savior. That Savior is Jesus. Our salvation depends on the birth of that Savior. Without Christmas, without the Christmas celebration, without the birth of Jesus, well, there's no Christmas. But beyond that, there's no chance to live eternally. If that message makes you uncomfortable, I'm okay with that. But I'd like you to think about it. If you rejoice in that message, amen. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas to your family, to your friends. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas. Hope you get a chance to spend some time with the folks who mean the most to you. And please keep in mind the real reason for Christmas. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK. That's 105.7 FM. You can hear us in Muskegon, WKBZ 1090 AM, and north of the bridge in Newberry, WNBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination. What do I mean by year-round? I mean year-round. If they're fishing on Saginaw Bay, you can get access to the bay and information about fishing the bay and gear for fishing the bay and boats for fishing the bay, or ice fishing equipment too, to a lesser degree, from Linwood Beach Marina, linwoodbeachmarina.com, linwoodbeachmarina.com. Now, I know the folks at Linwood Beach, including Captain Jason Graham of Sended Charters, are keeping a close eye on the ice out there on Saginaw Bay. As we are here in the studio right now, I know some people are venturing out into the shallows. I don't know how far out they're getting. But if you're looking for the latest ice conditions, get in touch with the folks at Linwood Beach Marina. They're not going to say go or no, but they're going to tell you what they know and leave it up to you. The website, Linwood Beach Marina, and from there you can get their phone number as well, linwoodbeachmarina.com, linwoodbeachmarina.com. In the first segment, I was talking about the outdoor activities that are going on right now. You know, bow season, some ice fishing, some river fishing, predator hunting, trapping, and let's not forget about rabbit hunting. I look at my own life. When I was a kid growing up, the first thing I ever hunted was squirrels, and that's because the season started in September. And then it was pheasants because the season started October 20th. And then it was deer because the season started November 15th. And then when deer season was done, we turned our attention to rabbit hunting. And I think about the hours that I spent tromping through the woods, tromping on brush piles, trying to kick a rabbit out. We didn't have beagles, but some of our friends did. And what a riot that was. So to me, beagles and bunnies are just part of our Michigan wintertime tradition. Nobody knows that better than Corky Legue. He's been around beagles and rabbit hunting for many, many years. In fact, his family are so very well known. They're icons in the beagle world here in Michigan. And he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Corky, welcome back. How are you?
How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good. Is it too early to get out there chasing rabbits, or are some folks already out there?
Oh, it's already happening. And it's this kind of weather right here where you get this little bit of a warm trend. Oh, this is great stuff.
Why is that?
It just seems like, when we get that warmer weather, you get a little sunshine, and the rabbits are just on the run. They're ready to go. So my nephew, he has kind of picked up the torch and the family name, and he lives beagles, lives it. Every day he is out running his beagles.
So he would be, what, a third-generation Legue beagle guy?
Yep. And he runs all over the country. He does some field trialing and stuff with them, the competition. Once you start getting those beagles that are just really good at it, you kind of want to measure them against other people, and other people's dogs. But he is in the woods. Dylan lives for hunting, and he just loves the rabbit hounds.
When we get done, Corky, text me his number. It sounds like somebody I'd like to get in touch with for a future show.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And another young guy, well, I say young guy, I grew up with Gary King. He and I were neighbors, and he was like a brother. And his boy, Rich, has lived this for it's got to be 20 years now, and he is one of the best in the country. They are just dominating everything, and they're right here in Vassar. And that's another guy you would like to spend some time talking to, Rich or Gary. Great people, and again, they live dogs.
Yeah, text me their numbers. I would love to talk with them. I want to go back to the weather for a minute. You said a break in the weather is good. What about here, and we're recording this midweek, before the weather broke, when it was just brutal and miserable and windy and zero wind chills? Do the rabbits tend to just hunker down during weather like that?
Yeah, they do. A lot of times they'll hole up, or, they get out of the way. Windy days is, how deer hunting is not usually good on windy days. Well, the same with the, rabbits. They just tend to disappear. And
by disappear, we're talking they go down into those holes. They go down into those brush piles. They hunker down underneath those fallen logs, and it can be tough to get them out of there. But a dog certainly helps, doesn't it?
It makes all the difference in the world. With deer, you get that nice open woods. We actually call it deer woods, where the deer can lay and see for a long ways off, where your rabbits, the thick, nasty creek bottoms, that's the best. And that's where those beagles come in. 2-3 beagles is just an amazing team. You do a little bit of the walking, but mainly you want to just set up in an area where, for an ambush is really what it is. And those beagles will get them started and just push them and keep them going until you get the shot.
Is a beagle the perfect rabbit dog?
100%. Yep. Now, I had an uncle who had bassets, and I never really got into that, but they were like a big hound, I mean, they're short, but they're like a hound dog with no legs, sawed-off legs.
And did he run rabbits with him?
Yes. Yep. And it's a different type of, more cumbersome and different, but he loved it. He had bassets his whole life.
Well, that would have been something to see and hear.
Yeah, they have a bigger, like a houndier voice, ball mouth, real long, stretched out, kind of a bawl, as they call it, where, and some beagles do too, but I always preferred what's called the chop mouth, which is the short, choppy bark. It keeps their head more in the area where the scent is. So the ball mouth, they tend to lift their head in the air to let that ball out as they're running, and sometimes a little harder to stay on the line.
So what, as a hunter, what can you tell from the bark or the howl or the bawl of the dog?
Most generally, when you hear that, because some dogs use both, when they're first getting started, if they're cold trailing, it'll be a little bit longer bark with bigger space in between. And then once it's hot and scent is good and they can really get going, it's just bang, 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 bang. The barks are real close together, steady, and they're just moving ground.
What do you mean by cold trail?
You know how when you go out to the woods and you'll see some rabbit tracks, and they look fresh, but 90% of the time that's what's called a feed line, where they were just out poking around, eating and so forth, and then you'll see them head off, and then my dad taught me, if you look at the track, you'll see it's small, and they're just kind of just two little spots. And then next thing you know, when you see them stretched out with a distance between them, they've been jumped out of their setup. With the beagles, that's normally what happens is some dogs will cold trail. They'll bark on the line before the rabbit is actually jumped out of the setup. And then, and once that happens, oh man, they're just screaming, chopping.
And you mentioned, I thought you said 3 dogs as your preferred number to run?
Yes, I love 3 dogs. It's 3 dogs that work well together, and that's always the key. Man, they can you won't have much for breakdown time. They just recover and trust each other, and when I say recover, rabbits will do tricks, and they'll do jags and turns and over a log and under a log, and maybe I've even seen them climb up trees a little ways and jump off, and we used to run where there was a train car, and we'd set up on this train car, and we watched a rabbit come running straight down, stop, run back about 50 yards, and then just jump with everything he had off to the side, and big bounds. And them dogs, see, when they're running hot, they're coming, they hit the end of that line, they got to stop and work it back until they find where he cut off. So, yeah, it is, they do a lot of tricks.
And they'll generally, if I remember right, tend to run in a circle?
Yes. It's kind of their defense for predators is they keep going circling over their tracks and trying to, just make too many scent trails.
How cold of a trail can a beagle follow?
Well, some have better noses than others. And that is a huge factor in the breeding program. So when a person knows that some dogs can track and they won't bark, they keep their mouth shut. That's the way it's supposed to be. And then once they jump the rabbit, then they start barking. But there are dogs that cold trail, and you'll hear, I grew up with one like that. That's what my dad taught me with. And this dog's name was Tiger, and just a medium speed, good hunting dog. And he would bark, and then he would just keep working that line. So usually they can work that line on a good scenting day. That rabbit could be half hour old, maybe even an hour.
Hang tight, Corey. I got it. We'll follow up on this. I got to take a break. You know how this works. I know it can be frustrating on that end of the conversation because we have hard breaks here, meaning I have to take a break when I have to take a break. And even if I'm not ready, Charlie Root, who is in the studio here, who is he's a guy who's just, he'll make me take a break. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show and Carol on WKYO 1360 AM and WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM, and you can hear us north of the bridge in Escanaba. WCHT 600 AM 93.5 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by VersaSkins, Michigan-based family-owned VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. Why buy a bunch of different sets of expensive hunting clothes when you can buy one good quality, warm, wind-resistant, water-resistant set that you can snap on and zip on an outer shell of a different camo pattern in less than a minute. It's a genius idea. Paul Perrone, the guy behind the company, and you know he's Michigan-based, family-owned. I love Michigan-based, family-owned companies. If you're looking for big sizes, 4, 5, 6X, VersaSkins is for you. If you're a saddle hunter, VersaSkins is for you. Check them out online at versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com, or go to amazon.com and do a search for VersaSkins brand. Just change your skin for the season you're in. And right now, the season we're in, maybe a little early this year, is basically a wintertime outdoor season for many people. For generations here in Michigan, that has meant rabbit hunting. And for a lot of those folks, chasing bunnies with beagles. The Legue family is very well known here in Michigan and, in fact, across the country as experts when it comes to hunting rabbits behind beagles. Corky Legue is with us right now talking more about that. Corey, I want to follow up. You said a track is what, maybe a couple hours old and they can follow it, or is that too much?
Yeah, they can do it, usually hour and a half, they can track it and then slowly work it out and then jump the rabbit from its setup. And then the race takes place.
The race being basically the chase?
Yes. The rabbit is on the move, and then when you have three good dogs that work well together, there's not much downtime, so it keeps that rabbit moving nonstop. If it's a little too slow or the dogs are not doing a good job, the rabbit has the upper hand, and then the tricks start, and there's a good chance you may not ever get that one.
Oh, so the rabbit sometimes wins in this contest.
Oh, definitely, yes. And sometimes, they'll head to a hole or, we had one in our area that we used to, my brother always said we need to paint his ears red so nobody shoots him because he was fun to watch all the tricks he would play. And this rabbit would literally swim across the pond out to this little island. And the dogs could never get it figured out that he was out there on that island.
It sounds to me like you guys spend as much time just watching dogs and watching rabbits as you do shooting at them or shooting them.
Yes, we spent so much time running those hounds. It was more perfecting the hounds and breeding above average beagles consistently. That was our goal. And, at one time I had 27 beagles.
That's a lot.
So I had a lot of dogs.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of dogs.
So do you, as the hunter, do you teach this dog how to hunt, or you just let him go and get out of the way?
Well, for the average guy, you can get a pup, spend some time training. The internet offers so much now for helping you to understand how to train it. But a well-bred beagle is going to be a rabbit hound. Now, sometimes they'll do chase stuff they're not supposed to. So, the big crime is deer. You don't want a beagle doing that. So learning how, to break them. An e-collar is an amazing thing today because they track as well as have the ability to correct them. And so for the most part, they are just going to be rabbit hounds. And now it's just a matter of giving them time in the woods to perfect it.
Do all of your dogs these days have those e-collars?
Yeah, maybe the collars now are so amazing. You can look at it and it'll tell you the dog's, 200 yards over there, even if he's not barking. Or what's nice is some of the guys, their dogs have gotten in holes, jam piles, and gotten stuck. caught up, and because of the collar, they could find them.
Yeah, these beagles, they get on a track, they'll go through some pretty thick stuff, won't they?
Oh yeah, they have a big heart, and they're going for it, everything they got. And the bond between a hunter and his dog. I mean, I think that from other, bird dogs and so forth.
Yeah.
But those dogs, they want to please you. They are your partner.
Yeah, it is a relationship that if you haven't been a part of it, it's hard to understand. I grew up over bird dogs, over English setters, and to watch those dogs hunt birds, want to make us as the hunter and their hunting buddy. In fact, I had an English setter that pretty much taught me how to hunt pheasants. So I get completely what you're saying, Corky. And I appreciate you spending some time with us today and reminding us about this Michigan wintertime tradition of beagles and bunnies. Shoot me those names of those couple of young guys, and I'll follow up with them too, Corky.
Oh, yeah, they would love it. That would be great.
All right, Corky Legue, appreciate your time, buddy. Have a good season, and we'll talk again.
Take care, Mike.
All right, we'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, Beth Gruden of the Michigan Wildlife Council. I want to get an update on the Here for Generations campaign, and Beth is a good person to get a feel for this. She's been a part of the council for a long time. She's seen the evolution of that campaign. I think it's a great move to support, protect, promote hunting and fishing. Hey, there's no downside to it. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold WCBY, 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in, let's go to Tawas, WIOS, 1480 AM, 106.9 FM, and venture north of the bridge to Marquette, WDMJ, 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Killer Food Plots. Now is a good time to take a look at your food plots. How did they do for you? How did they work out for you this year? Ours were not as effective as we would like, so I have reached out to Rich Grzan at Killer Food Plots. He has agreed to work with us next year. This is a project I'm going to follow throughout the entire process. I think, I'm going to find it interesting, and hopefully you do as well. Check them out online at killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com, Michigan-based, family-owned. Speaking of our great state of Michigan here, I have partnered with the Michigan Wildlife Council for the past several years and followed their Here for Generations campaign. I'm a big fan of this group and the people in the group because I think promoting, protecting, and encouraging people to learn more and even get involved in our outdoor lifestyle is just a wonderful and very, very much needed activity these days. Beth Gruden is a member of this group. She has been for quite a while, and she joins us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Welcome back, Beth.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
A real pleasure. Hopefully we don't have an echo this time like we had last time for you.
Hopefully.
So you can hear me? There's no.
I can hear you. No echoes.
So listen, you have been a member of the Wildlife Council for a while now. You've seen the evolution of the group, the evolution of the campaign. Are you making an impact?
Yes. I can confidently say we are making an impact. Our numbers of approval are up across the state. And we are progressing. I'm super excited about the latest campaign. We're starting before the numbers showed that, they weren't ready. The public wasn't ready to see hunters like actually hunting, and fishermen was a little bit more acceptable, but hunters actually hunting firearms in the ads was always kind of a no-go.
Yeah.
They weren't ready for it, but we've gotten to the point where we're using hunters and we're using firearms in our ads, and our numbers are still growing. So I'm excited to see the progression and how far we've gotten. And as always, as our numbers keep growing, it just keeps showing that yeah, it's working.
And I don't think this can be overstated what a big deal this is. You're looking at an audience primarily in the southern part of the state that is not necessarily an anti-hunting audience, but they are ignorant, and I don't mean that in a negative sense. They just don't know about it. So when the thought of showing a hunter carrying a gun in the woods, when they first see this, they're like, oh, I don't like this. But now you've got it to the point where they accept it, which I think is pretty cool.
Right. That's where, when we started doing that, I thought, oh boy, can we do it yet? And it's showing that we can, and we've gotten them there. And to me, that's super exciting. It's super exciting to see these years of work is starting to pay off. I bet
there was some spirited discussion at the time about whether we're going to take this leap or not.
There was, but there was only a few of us that had been on long enough that we remembered why we weren't doing it. So
that's where experience pays off, Beth.
so the spirited discussion did happen, but I was like, hey, we trust our marketing team, and our marketing team said we think they're ready. So we went there, and I'm happy to say that it does appear that we were ready. So.
Now, the Michigan Wildlife Council and your Here for Generations campaign, by the way, the website is here4mioutdoors.org. One of only 2 in the country. I think Colorado's the other one. Are there people looking at you from across the country, Beth, saying, you know what, I'd like to learn from you folks. How can you help us out? Do you think we will see more groups like yours in the future?
Yes. There are more states looking into having groups like this to just promote the outdoor lifestyle. And so that's pretty cool. There's
really no downside to it, is there?
No, not really. I mean, you're basically promoting what all of us do, right? We all love to hunt and fish and be outside, and you're promoting it to the people who could potentially have a voting impact at some point in time if any of this does make it to a ballot. So it's nice to educate them as to, this is what we do, this is why we do it, this is why it's so great. And in that same token, this is why it helps you. Like, here's what our license fees pay for. And look, some of that stuff is stuff you enjoy. So I think it's great. I don't see a downside to this campaign. I don't see a downside to always putting forward what we do and why we do it.
And you have been doing this for a lot of years, Beth, in your position on the Wildlife Council. So I thank you for that. I appreciate what the group overall is doing. I appreciate you partnering with me. Keep up the good work, and you and I will stay in touch.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks, Mike.
Beth Gruden of the Michigan Wildlife Council. Thank you, Beth. They're Here for Generations campaign. I mean, I talk about this on the show all the time. For generations, we have celebrated and lived this outdoor lifestyle here in our great state of Michigan, and we don't want to see it go away. So I applaud and support any individual, any group who is dedicated to trying to save and promote that way of life. The website here for mioutdoors.org, here for mioutdoors.org. We'll take a break. When we come back in hour number 2, Jim Felgenauer plus Eric Hilliard talks about the pure Michigan hunt.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yater Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Hammond Drives and Equipment, Garber Chevrolet, the West Branch Visitors Bureau, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction. And welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show. Merry Christmas to you, to your family. I hope that the joy and peace of this season is something that you can relate to, something you can grab on. during what is usually often a very busy time of year. And if you let it, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So don't let it. Enjoy the real reason that is this Christmas season. I appreciate you being along with us. I would encourage you, as I do each week, to listen to the show if you can on your local radio station, your local AM or FM station. I'm heard across the state, except for one corner of our state. And that corner of our state, the stations there, well, they want something from me that I'm not willing to do. Let's just put it that way. But if you can, listen to the broadcast version on your local AM or FM station. If you can't, like I said, if you're not if you can't hear the show or can't hear all 3 hours of the broadcast version of the show, it is nice to know that there's a podcast available. The podcast is the same content as the broadcast version of the show. It's just somewhere else. It's made available somewhere else, including my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, my Facebook page, Amazon Music, Audible, Twitter, now called X, and all of the other podcast outlets. If you can hear a podcast on a certain outlet, you can probably hear the podcast version of the Outdoor Magazine radio show. I do like podcasting. I mean, everybody's got a podcast these days, right? It's the fastest growing and hottest form of communication today, in my opinion. And I have jumped on the bandwagon as well, but I jumped on this bandwagon before most other people did. Each month, I do podcasts for some of my advertising partners, including Offshore Tackle, Killer Food Plots, and Angler Quest Boats, Angler Quest Pontoons. And when we're done here in the studio this week recording the radio show, I will record this month's Angler Quest podcast with Mr. Angler Quest himself, Brad Dupuis. So keep an ear out for that. I would appreciate it. My first guest this hour is a guy I've known for a while. His name is Jim Felgenauer, and he's a guy that I have a lot of respect for. Not only is Jim an avid hunter, an avid angler, and he's very knowledgeable in both of those fields, but he's a guy who I have watched and admired his work ethic, his ability, his willingness to get involved in this outdoor space these days. Now, so many of us, hunters and anglers, we're not joiners. We're not activists. We are individuals. That's why we like to hunt and fish, right? We do it alone. We do it in small groups. We do it with our family. We do it with our friends. We don't like to step out of our comfort zone. We don't like to join. We don't like to sign up. We don't like to lead groups. But we have to these days. And Jim Felgenauer is the best example of this that I can think of. And he joins us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Welcome back, buddy. How are you?
Good. And Merry Christmas, Mike, to you and your family.
Merry Christmas to you as well, my friend. Before we get into the other topics, like your 350 legend and the perch spearing on Lake St. Clair, are you getting an echo, by the way, Jim?
I am not.
Okay. All right. Very good. I want to talk about being involved. This is something that you have really, you've set the standard for this. Why is this so important to you, and why is this so important to our lifestyle these days?
Well, generally, Mike, if you take from something, you've got to give back, right? And, I've always been a guy that I hate the phrase that somebody's got to do it, because you are somebody. I am somebody, right? So there's certain things that are important, and somebody's got to take a leadership role, and I am that guy, or you are that guy. I don't ever want to hear from somebody that says that somebody should do that. I'm going to look right back at them and tell them you are somebody. If you feel that way, then take the reins and take a leadership role and move forward.
But I see a lack of getting involved these days in all kinds of, civic organizations, hunting and fishing groups, church activities. People just are not joiners. They don't want to get involved. They don't want to be a part of things. And maybe it's because people are just so incredibly busy these days or whatever, but it's harder and harder to get people involved.
Well, I'm fortunate enough right now, Mike, to be retired. And I did some of this before I was retired. And I certainly understand that people are busy and they have other priorities. But, the thing is that my wife and I have been very blessed in life. And sometimes you get to a point in your life where you want to share your blessings. You want to give back to something. You want to do something that's bigger than you. You want to leave a legacy, something that's going to live beyond your own lifetime. So hopefully people will do that.
Well, you certainly have, Jim Felgenauer, and I applaud you for that. I want to talk a little bit about your hunting season. I know you are you're shooting with a 350 Legend, as I am as well. I have not taken as many animals with that gun as you have with yours, but boy, my experiences so far have been pretty impressive, and it sounds like you're a fan too.
I'm a big fan, Mike. I did a lot of research before I made that purchase. Again, not bragging. I've killed 3 deer this year at over 150 yards with that rifle, and they all 3 dropped on the spot. They never took a step. And the more important thing about that is, I do my own butchering. In fact, I'm going to butcher on Friday. I've butchered some deer killed with a 450 Bushmaster, and it does a lot of damage. And I am getting very little meat damage from that 350.
Yeah, it feels like it's kind of maybe I don't want to say a perfect sweet spot, but it's a good sweet spot between low recoil, effectiveness, and just a comfortable gun to shoot. So that's not our topic of discussion, but I just wanted to bring that up, saying you're having pretty good luck with it too.
Very good luck, and I've got it sighted in, dead on hold out to 225 yards, and it's just spot on. It's cheap to shoot. It's a lot of fun. One of the best purchases I ever made.
Yeah, when I got my Brenton, I had a choice of what caliber I wanted. I went through the different, options as well, and I settled on a 350, and I've been very, very happy. All right, let's turn our attention to something else, Jim Felgenauer. You are very active in the Lake St. Clair River fishery through your Sturgeon for Tomorrow, stclairsturgeon.org group. But also you're an avid angler, a walleye angler, a perch angler. I find Lake St. Clair fascinating. It is an absolute fish factory, one of the best fisheries in Michigan overall. But the fact that you guys can legally spear perch on Lake St. Clair, and it's the only place in the state you can do that, right?
Yeah, that's correct, Mike. And in fact, we are very fortunate to have early ice this year. That hasn't always been the case, and it hasn't always been the case that the season is open at this time of the year. When I was younger, the spearing season went from January 1st until the end of February, and probably 10 years ago or so, we got that changed. So now the spearing season starts December 1st and goes all the way to March 15th. So that should cover the entire ice season, where in the past it did not.
Is it a popular activity? Are there a lot of people who do it, or is there a smaller, hardcore bunch of, I'm going to say old timers, so go back to the old days and try to keep the tradition going?
Well, Mike, I think the interesting thing is, and you talk about the old days, there used to be a big shanty town out here off of Fairhaven and whatever, and you see the wood shacks out there. Now when you go drive by in the evening, there's no shanties out there because everybody takes their shanty home with them. Everybody's in portables, right?
Yeah.
So, but as far as the spearing tradition, spearing isn't always the best tool in the box, right? There are a lot more effective methods of fishing, and that goes to some of our open water, underwater spearing these days. It's not nearly as effective as jigging, right? So the spearing is a unique opportunity. It's a great tool in the toolbox, but you kind of got to know when to use it.
Well, and let's talk about that after the break. I do have to take a break here, Jim. When we come back, we'll talk more with Jim Felgenauer about perch spearing on Lake St. Clair and when to pull out the spear and when to keep the jigging rod and, the traditional way of perch fishing. By the way, the group that Jim is involved with and spearheaded and led for many years, stclairsturgeon.org is their website, stclairsturgeon.org. That group has been very much involved in promoting sturgeon and sturgeon fishing. In fact, here in my part of the state where I live, what used to be called the Saginaw Valley, now it's called the Great Lakes Bay region, folks are already out on the ice on the Saginaw River as too, and I'm already seeing reports of sturgeon being caught. Now, obviously, those fish are released, but it's really cool that we have sturgeon now in this part of the state. And we have the Black Lake chapter to thank for this. We have the St. Clair chapter to thank for this. People who have promoted sturgeon, protecting sturgeon, and improving sturgeon populations across the state. And I think it's very cool. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on the Twister, 92.1 WTWS. You can hear us in Lansing on WILS, 1320 AM, and north of the bridge in the Sioux, WKNW, 1400 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine, need I even say more? You want to hear it again, just to make sure, right? You don't. Okay, you know what that is. That's the sound of my Rapid River knife locking open. I just took it out of my pocket, where it is almost all the time. I use my Rapid River knife every day, sometimes for cool things like field dressing animals, sometimes for mundane things like opening boxes. But it's always there. I love Rapid River knives. I love the fact that they are handmade by craftsmen in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. The website is rapidriverknifeworks.com. That's rapidriverknifeworks.com. Now, the store was completely sold out for Christmas. After Christmas, they will work hard to start refilling their supply again, including the Mike Avery signature knife. That proceeds from this knife that I have in my hand go to Outdoor Driven, a group designed to take first responders and vets on outdoor adventures as a reward for the stress and trauma they have had to deal with throughout their lives. If you go to the website, rapidriverknifeworks.com, or stop by the showroom on US 2 just east of Rapid River, and you use the promo code MikeAvery15, you can get 15% off your entire order. Well, except for the Avery knife, because we want there to be money in that for Outdoor Driven. rapidriverknifeworks.com, rapidriverknifeworks.com, a great Michigan company. Another website for you, stclairsturgeon.org, is the website of the St. Clair chapter of Sturgeon for Tomorrow. Jim Felgenauer, for many years, was the president of that group. Are you still, Jim, the president of that group?
Vice president currently, Mike.
Vice president. All right. So let's go back to St. Clair, Lake St. Clair perch spearing. You said sometimes it's not the best choice, but it sure sounds like a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun, Mike, but let me take you through the process.
Please,
okay?
Please.
The first thing you got to do is find some fish. Now, the key thing with the spearing is to attract fish into the hole. A lot of times we'll use a decoy, a wooden decoy. You can use live perch on pin. You can use a spoon. You can use a jigging rapala. But you need something flashy, something attractive to bring fish into the hole. So what we'll do is we'll move. I will cut a hole, and I will sit on a small hole that you can't spit through, and I will just start dropping a decoy down. And if I don't have fish coming into that hole within 1 or 2 minutes, I move. Okay, until I actually find some fish. Okay, so then I'll cut a bigger hole, something I can spear through, right? And the process is that you jig that decoy or whatever you're using to bring fish into the hole. The first step is a beaded spoon because it's very aggressive, it's very attractive, and it's barbless. It fishes very, very fast. And if you get fish coming in and you can catch them on that, fine. If they're not aggressive enough, you can switch to a small teardrop with like a 1-inch plastic or something. So sometimes that will trigger them if they're not aggressive enough to hit that spoon. And after you have done that, and you're not catching fish, but you have fish in the hole, that's when you bring out the spear.
So it's kind of the last
but
resort.
You can generally do. It's kind of a last resort thing, but there are situations where the spear can be a first resort, and those two situations, a lot of times if you have a great big school of fish in the hole, as aggressive as they might be, a lot of those smaller fish are a lot more aggressive than the bigger ones, and they'll be higher in the water column, and you just can't get a jig down past those smaller fish to get to the bigger fish in the bottom. And that's an opportunity right there where you can use a spear and get through those smaller fish, even though they're aggressive and biting, but if you're after some bigger fish, you just make a choice there and throw the spear instead of fishing with the jig. And sometimes what happens with that, Mike, one of the ways that we used to attract perch into the hole is to throw a pike spear down to the side of the hole, drag it across the bottom, and stir up some mud. And sometimes when you got that big school of aggressive fish, you throw that spear down there, it stirs up some mud, and even more fish come in. So that's an opportunity. The other opportunity for the spear is when you have fish coming in small pods of 2 or 3 at a time. They're not very aggressive at all. Then you can just pick off those fish from those, pick the bigger fish out of those small schools without spooking any fish out of the hole. So there's a couple of situations where the spear really, really shines, but you got to pick your day.
So is a perch spear like a pike spear, just smaller?
Small. The tines are closer together, and typically you're not going to have barbs on a perch spear. Usually the wedge effect is enough, and the fish aren't that heavy, so they don't really come off the spear readily. So if you do have barbs, you're just going to tear up the meat. So typically you won't have barbs on a perch spear.
Well, even a jumbo, and whatever a jumbo is in people's minds, say you got a 12-inch perch, do you lose a lot of meat by getting them with a spear instead of hook and line?
No, you really don't, because you don't have barbs on there.
Okay.
When they come off, they come straight out. You don't do any damage to the meat, really.
So as you're sitting there, your primary attack is with, you're jigging with a perch rig or whatever, or just jigging with a spoon or teardrop or whatever. Is the spear then in the water next to you, ready to go if you need it?
It's not actually in the water. Of course, it's tied off with a rope to the top of the shanty. And again, the other thing here, we're talking about shallow water, okay? So you are not going to typically do this in 12 or 15 feet of water. You're limited to shallow water. And sometimes it's too deep, the fish can actually dodge that spear. You throw the spear, and the fish have time to move out from underneath it. So, typically you're going to be in 8 feet of water or less, sometimes 6 feet. But it's a shallow water presentation. You're not going to do this. If the fish are in deeper water, you're gonna jig, you're gonna fish spoons, something like that, right?
It's been a lot of years since I've thrown a spear at a pike, but I remember that it looks different. There's refraction, and the fish isn't where you think it is, and it takes a while to get the hang of where you got to drop that spear or throw that spear. When you go from a 2-foot pike down to a 1-foot perch, your target gets pretty small.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of eventually, learning that, if the fish is outside of the hole, typically out in front of you, you're just going to have to aim a little bit low. But, you get the hang of it. I used to be really, really good at that, probably not so much anymore, but, it's a small target, but you can lower that spear pretty close to that fish and kind of throw it like a dart. You don't want to jerk it, but you want to give it a nice smooth release and kind of just throw it like a dart. I'd put my index finger right on the end of the spear, and you can do pretty well.
How is the Lake St. Clair perch population?
It's amazing right now, especially first ice. There's a lot of fish out there to be had. There are guys that are just pounding those fish right now. And, the growth rate is good. There's some big fish out there. Again, you got to sometimes hunt around to find them, but once you do find them, you can be very, very successful.
I got to believe on Lake St. Clair, because everything that grows in Michigan as far as a fish, except for salmon, and I guess there probably are some salmon in there once in a while, you're going to find them in Lake St. Clair. So as you're sitting there staring down that hole, do you ever see muskies? Do you see sturgeon? Do you see big pike come through there?
We always keep pike spear in the shanty as well, and we've speared some giant pike out there by our means, up to about 40 inches. I have had muskies come in. I've held a muskie in the hole for 5 minutes with a little orange decoy. He just keeps spinning around looking at that thing, and But the other thing that we see occasionally, because you do get a steelhead run up the Clinton River, is we'll see steelhead out there as well. So we have caught some steelhead out on Lake St. Clair during the wintertime through the ice.
Do the sturgeon, do they winter in the lake, or do they go in the river? They spend the wintertime in the river?
I think a little bit of both, but they're typically off of Harrison Township out on that side of the lake, the west side of the lake. Some of those guys will occasionally see a sturgeon out there.
What you folks have done with that sturgeon fishery, especially in the St. Clair River, is really quite impressive. I mean, this is the fishery that didn't exist not too many years ago, and now it's growing like crazy. And you're popular. You've got enough fish there now. You've told me in the past, Jim, you have a very good chance, if you know at all what you're doing, of getting fish. I mean, that's very impressive.
Well, yeah, Mike, our tournament this year, 8 hours, 23 boats. There was 80 fish landed in an 8 hour day.
Wow.
So great fishery. And you guys are doing a great job up there in the Saginaw River and that watershed as well. So great to see some people up there catching sturgeon through ice. So a great effort up there. Appreciate that. And kudos to you.
Living dinosaurs. When you have a chance to put your hands on or even see a sturgeon, it's a pretty special experience.
Yeah, those guys that are catching those up on the Saginaw River, they haven't always had that opportunity, and it's great to see that happening.
Jim Felgenauer, keep up the good work with the group, St. Clair Sturgeon, the website stclairsturgeon.org. Thanks for letting us know more about this perch fishery on Lake St. Clair. And most of all, Jim, just thank you for being involved, encouraging other people to get off their rear ends and get involved. I think we don't have that luxury anymore, and you're a perfect example of somebody who will step up and get the job done. So good job, buddy.
Thank you, Mike.
We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, the Pure Michigan Hunt. Eric Hilliard of the DNR is going to join me. The Pure Michigan Hunt, which, by the way, I am going to win. I feel like it's this year. I'm going to be one of the 3 names drawn. And that's how I'm going to get my elk tag. I'm not going to get it through the regular drawing, even though I will continue to try. Pure Michigan Hunt. Then after that, the Ask Avery segment will wrap up hour 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can hear us in Holland on WHTC, that's 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Manistee on WTIQ, 1490 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let them create an outdoor getaway in your backyard. Though right now, the Reader crews are spending a lot of time plowing snow. I can also tell you for a fact, because I saw it with my own eyes at my own house, they're doing some dormant season pruning. The trees around the corner of the house they want to grow like crazy and get too big. So every year I have the folks from Reader come in a couple times a year and knock them back down to a manageable level and make them look real nice. Check them out online at readerlandscaping.com, readerlandscaping.com. They've been doing it 60 years, so you know they do it right, readerlandscaping.com. This is the year that I'm going to win the Pure Michigan Hunt. I know I've said it before, but I can feel it. I can feel it in my bones. I've been trying to bribe Eric Hilliard at the DNR. I'll be honest with you, okay? I've been trying to bribe Eric to help me win the Pure Michigan Hunt, and the guy will not go along with it, but he is going along with joining me on the phone line today. Eric, welcome back. How are you?
Thank you so much, Mike. I'm doing good, and even though I'm unbribable, I'm still rooting for you. Just like I'm rooting for everybody else out there who wins an application. That one of my greatest joys is being able to make that phone call and let people know that they're one of the winners. And you never know; this year might be your year.
No, there's no might about it. This year is my year. I think the Pure Michigan Hunt is a wonderful program. You get 3 winners every year. 3 winners every year. What do they get, Eric?
Well, they get a great prize package from our wonderful sponsors that if you go to michigan.gov/PMH for Pure Michigan Hunt, you can see all the prizes there in the prize package as well as the sponsors, and we've got links to their websites there. But on top of that wonderful prize package, and I think the thing that people are most interested in is the license package, because they get to hunt bear and elk and spring and fall turkey and antlerless deer and get first pick at a managed waterfowl area for a reserved hunt. And so it ends up being just this amazing year of hunting opportunities. It really is the ultimate hunt that you can have here in Michigan.
It is the ultimate hunt. And the bull elk tag is the one I think that really gets people's attention. It's $5 per application, if I remember right, but there's no limit on how many times you can apply, right?
Yep, that's correct. The overwhelming number of our applicants, maybe by, 2 or 3 applications, just to get their name in the running. But you'd be amazed at the number. I think a couple of years ago, like 2 of our winners had bought only 1 application. All it takes is 1 application to win.
I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. I know you only have to enter once, but the fact that I had 20 entries and didn't win, Eric, I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you. This is my year, though. Okay, so how many times, and this came up the other day, can you win the Pure Michigan Hunt multiple times, or is it a one and done?
There is nothing that says that you can't win the Pure Michigan Hunt more than once.
Wouldn't that be something?
Now, the odds of doing that, the odds of winning it twice, that would be amazing, but it is possible.
How many people apply for the Pure Michigan Hunt in a given year?
Well, last year we had the most applicants ever at almost 33,000. This year, as of today, we're sitting at almost 30,000.
And you draw 3 winners. Now, I'm no statistician here, but I keep thinking my odds of getting a bull elk tag are actually better through the Pure Michigan Hunt than they are the standard elk lottery.
I don't know that I would necessarily go that far, just because of the way the weighted chance system works, and the way this system works. But I will say that if you enter the regular elk draw and you enter the Pure Michigan Hunt, your odds are certainly better. In fact, we had a winner a few years ago who was drawn for the Pure Michigan Hunt and drawn for his bull elk tag in the same year. And because you can transfer that Pure Michigan Hunt, he gave that tag to his son, and they went out and had an amazing father-son elk hunt. They both took a couple of beautiful bull elks.
And I hope he played the lottery during that same time period, because the luck was on his side. Eric, how do we apply?
Oh, you aren't kidding. So the best way to apply, so you can apply at a regular brick-and-mortar shop, bait and tackle store, wherever we have a retail license location. Just ask for a Pure Michigan Hunt application or applications if you want to buy more than one. You can also purchase online. If you go to michigan.gov/PMH, we've got details on how to buy there. as well as how to buy as a gift for the holiday season. Let's say you want to buy some stocking stuffers. Because this prize package is transferable, it's best to buy in your name, and then if you are selected as the winner, we go ahead and ask you who you want to be the de facto winner in your place, and we make that happen for you.
What's the deadline?
The deadline is 11:59 p.m. on December the 31st, because we're going to be doing this drawing next month, so you don't even have to wait that long to find out if you're a winner.
Eric, I will be looking forward to your phone call, because this is my year to win the Pure Michigan Hunt. Folks can apply at michigan.gov/PMH, michigan.gov/PMH. Eric, appreciate your time. Again, I will look forward to hearing your voice on my phone as I win the Pure Michigan Hunt, along with two of you. Okay, there's the three of us can win. I'm willing to share it, but I am one of the winners once again. Thanks, Eric. Hey, thank you so much for joining me this week here on the Outdoor Magazine show. Merry Christmas to you and your family. You notice I didn't say happy holidays, happy winter solstice. I said Merry Christmas. There's a reason we celebrate this season. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by the good folks at Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. You know this by now, but the way the Ask Avery segment works is you can send me an email to Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. With your question, I will answer it directly or reach out to somebody who knows more than I do, and that's pretty easy to find somebody who knows more than I do. Got a twofer for you this week. Hey, don't say I didn't give you anything. This is your Christmas present. It's a twofer. Jason Kubik sent me an email. He says, Mike, I saw this question posted on a Facebook page, and it has a lot of debate. When spearing for pike, how many lines can you fish with, 2 or 3? From the comments, people have gotten various answers from DNR officers. So I reached out to a DNR conservation officer. In fact, it was Sergeant Mike Mashar, a guy who I use here. I don't mean use in a negative sense, but he is a resource for me on a regular basis because he's a stand-up guy, and he's very accessible, and I appreciate that. He says, Mike, here's your answer. A spear does not count as a line, so you could run 3 tip-ups, etc., or, 3 lines. Additionally, a decoy on a line does not either, as long as there are no hooks on the decoy. He says, there is your definitive answer. So once again, a spear doesn't count as a line, so you could run 3 lines, tip-ups or whatever, and the decoy on a line, as long as there are no hooks on it, does not count as a line either. So I don't know why there is confusion about this. It seems pretty straightforward. I also, I wonder about different answers from different conservation officers. Maybe it is a miscommunication. Maybe the anglers misheard this or whatever. I mean, this is not one where there should be confusion on. Okay, let me go to the next one. Mike Baker sent me an email, again, to Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com, Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. He said, by the way, Mike, I listened to your show. He said, I listened to it on YouTube. He says, because I live in that one part of the state that does not have a broadcast station, Southeast Michigan. I'd like to say I'm working on that, but honestly, what those stations down there want from me, I am not willing to do. So I'm glad there's a podcast. Anyway, Mike says, he said, I had a thought regarding your commentary on the fighting within the outdoor community, with us being our own worst enemies, not the antis. I said that in this show as well. As the antis likely hear us talking about this being an issue in our community of outdoor enthusiasts, I feel that they may be behind some of the negative comments at times to continue their efforts in the elimination of hunting, fishing, shooting, and trapping. No way of knowing this is the case, of course, but I continue to find it hard to believe that outdoor people would continue to do this at the expense of their own sport. Probably naive on my part, but interested to hear your thoughts. Mike, this is an outstanding question. and one that I have pondered myself. Do the antis watch us, listen to us? I believe they do. I think they learn a lot from us, and I think they smile every time they see us fighting and questioning each other's methods of enjoying a legal harvest or a legal activity. Do they start some of this stuff? I guess it's probably possible. But from my perspective, I don't see it, because when I see these comments, if I have time, I routinely click on the profile of the person who made the comment to see who they are, to see if they are a blatant, obvious anti-hunter. Once in a while, I will see them. But unfortunately, the vast majority of negative comments I see when I click on the person's profile is somebody who looks like they are a fellow hunter. I mean, I see pictures of them posing with deer. I see pictures of them out in the woods. I see pictures of them whatever. So they appear to be legitimate outdoor enthusiasts. Why they would feel the need and why they would feel so privileged that they are so special that they can negatively comment on a fellow hunter or angler's post who is legally doing something and belittle that person and question that person and say you're doing it wrong. Why a fellow hunter or angler would feel so special and so above the rest of us that they can criticize us, I don't know. But it happens. It happens all the time. And I'm telling you right now, this is the biggest threat to hunting today. The antis are out there. We know where they're coming from. We know what they want. But if we stand together, we don't have to let them get their way. When we start this bickering, when we start this fighting, when we start questioning how fellow hunters do whatever it is, whether it's using a AR-15 during muzzleloader season, whether it's using a crossbow during bow season, whether it's wanting to use bait, whatever it is, and I'm not saying go out and bait illegally, but if somebody is doing something in a legal manner, hunting or fishing or shooting or trapping, we have no right to question them. We have no right to impugn their character. We have no right to criticize them. And if you want to lose this outdoor lifestyle, continue to act like a bunch of spoiled little kids and fight amongst ourselves, and see where it gets us. Thank you, Security Credit Union, for making each week's Ask Avery segment possible.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yater Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, The Forward Corporation, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Hammond Drives and Equipment, Garber Chevrolet, the West Branch Visitors Bureau, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. Merry Christmas to you and your family. So glad to have you along with us on this weekend. You know, as I was looking at this week's show and trying to figure out what to include as far as topics and guests, I was thinking about last week when I was talking with Daryl Godden, who is a wolf hunting guide in White River, Ontario. Now, I have had the opportunity to hunt wolves in White River, and I found it to be a very intense, very rewarding, and very cool experience. And I got thinking, wouldn't it be nice if we could hunt wolves here in Michigan? Well, rather than just have me speculate on this topic, it made sense to bring in a guy who is an absolute expert on this topic. His name is Brian Roell. He's a wildlife biologist for the Michigan DNR, and one of his primary areas of concern is our wolf population, and he has graciously agreed to join me. Brian, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Oh, thank you for having me. Doing well.
So listen, how did you get in this position that you're kind of, I'm going to use the term, overseeing our wolf population? I mean, what's your history? What's your background, Brian?
Well, that's a good question. It's kind of the funny thing was when I was looking at biologist positions and stuff early on in my career, I said one of the things I don't want to work with is wolves. But 27 years later, here I am working with wolves. I obviously did the undergrad, went out and did a master's degree working actually with Swift Fox out in the western part in Colorado. So I went from about the smallest canid in North America to the largest canid. Came back to Michigan where I grew up and started working with the DNR, and kind of early on in my career started working with wolves under the research side of it, and then basically almost my whole career, nearly 25, 26 years of my 27-year career, I've been working with wolves.
So a little bit of background on the wolves themselves. Are they native to Michigan?
They are, yeah. And there's actually some question on whether were they ever truly gone from Michigan. I kind of, when you look at the research and what's been published and those kinds of things, I think we probably had some kind of remnant population, at least in the Upper Peninsula, certainly not in the Lower Peninsula, but in the Upper Peninsula, there probably was a remnant few animals that still were hanging around after the bounties were taken off in 1960. And then ironically, just 5 years after the bounties were removed in 1965, wolves were given full legal protection in the state of Michigan.
Well, one of the things I hear a lot is that darn DNR, they brought wolves to Michigan. Did you guys ever have a project, a program where you brought wolves in?
Well, I can say the DNR hasn't, but there is a little grain of truth to what you said there. In 1974, in a cooperative agreement with actually Northern Michigan University and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Huron Mountain Club, which is a remote kind of exclusive club in the northern Marquette County, they did bring in 4 wolves from Minnesota in 1974. And they radio collared all those wolves. They were from one pack. They kept them in a pen. Actually, it wasn't that many years ago that I actually took a picture of the pen. It's still there, obviously falling down. But they put them in there, fed them, let them get used to the area, and then released them. Within 8 months, all 4 of those wolves were dead. They were radio collared, so we know their fate. 2 of them were shot. One was trapped and shot, and the other one was hit by a garbage truck. And they all scattered. They didn't stay together or anything like that. After that attempt in 1974, no other attempt was ever made to bring wolves back to the state of Michigan.
So the animals that we have now, where did they come from? Were they natural reproduction? Did they migrate in from other states?
Well, originally the founding members were probably came through Wisconsin, and then obviously some probably came through Ontario in the eastern Upper Peninsula. And so we know we have regular exchange in the Great Lakes states. We could do this by early on in my career. We used to use yellow different colored ear tags. So Minnesota was green, Wisconsin was yellow, and Michigan was red. And it was fairly common each year to have some of our wolves show up in their states and their wolves show up in our states. Now with satellite GPS collars, we actually can track this stuff and we can actually see it happening real time. So, some of our big movers, we had one of our wolves show up in Missouri. Then just a couple of years ago, you probably did a story on the one that made it over to Manitoba.
Yeah.
We've had our wolves over in near Sudbury, Ontario. We even had this collar is a couple of years old and the collar has since disappeared. We had a wolf in the eastern Upper Peninsula that regularly went from the mainland to Drummond Island to Cockburn Island to Ontario, and that was his travels, bouncing back and forth through there.
So how far will they travel in a normal day or week, whatever their cycle is? Do they cover a lot of range?
They do. They are built for moving. They are not heavily chested animals. They are built more like greyhounds, so very narrow chested. They're built for locomotion. This is an animal that goes jogging 10 to 12 hours a day, every day of their life. That's just what they do. They're constantly patrolling their territories, so they'll defend that territory from other packs or other canids, and then they're always on the hunt for that next meal. Being a carnivore is not really the best lifestyle. It's basically controlled starvation from one meal to the next. It's not an easy life to be a wolf.
I have never heard that term before, controlled starvation.
Yeah, I mean that, and you know, you think of terms, you've probably all heard of the term, you know, you're wolfing down your dinner.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they're doing, because it's feast or famine. You know, it's when they got that kill, they can take in large amounts because they don't know when that next meal is. And also they want to protect that kill or that scavenging site from other scavengers, whether it's ravens, crows, or coyotes, or any other the other carnivores that might scavenge up. You know, it's kind of surprising, but you know, on a deer carcass or deer meat, a raven can actually take in about 2 pounds of food. And as you know, a whitetail, especially a smaller whitetail, there's not all that much usable meat on there. For your regular deer hunters know out there that when you get that package from the processor or you do it yourself, you know, 100-pound deer, you're getting about 30 to 35 pounds of usable meat.
Yeah. So will and I've also heard this, that wolves will kill for sport or for fun. They don't have to be hungry. They don't have to eat. They'll do it for fun. Is it true?
No, you know, that's kind of a misnomer. You know, they don't have the luxury to have fun. Being in the wild, you know, they can't waste energy, certainly to just not kill for fun. You don't see that in canids. You know, but what they will do is they're opportunistic. So let's say they get into a group of deer, they're going to make any kills they can. And so they may not, you may find a deer where they fed on one and then they didn't feed on the other one. The reason they didn't feed on the other one is it kind of like you putting your submarine sandwich in the refrigerator. You're just keeping it safe till the next time you want to have a meal. So if they open that up, it attracts scavengers, and it also makes it available to some of the scavengers. So birds like crows and ravens don't have that bill structure to tear through deer hide. They can get at the soft parts, but not really get into that hide. So they may not touch that deer, but they're coming back, and they will utilize just about everything on a deer. I've seen in hard times in the winter where they'll actually come back and eat the hide. You know, but all the bones, the leg bones, they'll eat all those bones. Usually during midwinter, all you're going to really find is maybe the vertebral column and the skull, but usually the lower jaw is even eaten off the skull a lot of times on these kill sites. So I've heard all these rumors of this surplus killing, is what we call it in nature or biological terms, but I have yet to have anybody bring me a picture of that. You know, it's real easy to say that, but to actually document it is a far different thing.
Well, and there's something about wolves that people love to tell stories about. And I don't know if they are intentionally embellishing on these stories or if there's just this lore, this feeling about wolves here that people, they love to talk about. Brian, we got to take a break. Hang tight. We're talking with Brian Roell, who is a DNR wildlife biologist who has spent more than a quarter of a century dealing with our Michigan wolf population. So I have a lot more questions for Brian. But first, we'll take a break. By the way, the website for the Michigan DNR is michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. When we come back, more about wolves, more about a possible wolf hunt. Are we ever going to see it? Is it the DNR that is stopping this, or is it something more? We'll find out from Brian Roell after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Port Huron on WPHM 1380 AM. You can hear us in Sandusky on WMIC 600 AM 95.3 FM. By the way, those two parts of the state do not have wolves. I don't care what you say. I get this all the time. People send me emails. Avery, look at this wolf. Well, the first question is, where is this picture from? And if it's from the Lower Peninsula, especially the Southern Lower Peninsula, I say, no, you are looking at a big coyote. Now, this is me, Mike Avery, saying this. I am no expert, but let's talk to Brian Roell, who is a wolf expert with the Michigan DNR. Brian, I've got to believe that you get pictures of coyotes all the time from downstate with people claiming they're wolves.
I do. Yeah, that's a fairly common thing that we see is a lot of folks, they don't understand that that winter fur on a coyote makes them look much bigger than they actually are. And we just don't have any evidence to support that we have some kind of sustaining population of wolves in the lower peninsula. Now, obviously, we've had a couple individuals. In fact, in 2004, we had a collared animal make it from Mackinac County to the lower peninsula, was subsequently killed by a coyote trapper. And then we had some DNA, I believe, in 2011. And then, of course, last year we had that Calhoun County animal. However, I don't believe that Calhoun County animal got there naturally. I think there was some human intervention there. Obviously, I can't prove it. But given what we know about ice cover, shipping seasons, the northern route, it's not a likely area for them to come across. And obviously going south around through Chicago and Gary, Indiana, even seems more of an impedance than trying to swim some 5 mile plus 6 miles of water, or we just don't get the ice cover we used to have.
What about the concept? And I'm reluctant to even bring it up because I think it opens the door to a lot of things. Is there such a thing as a coy wolf in the Lower Peninsula, a crossbreeding of wolves and coyotes? Does it happen?
I mean, it's possible, but we're not detecting it. If it is happening, it's so small we can't genetically test it and find it. And we've tested, 400 or 500 individuals. We're not seeing that. Typically, wolves kill coyotes. They don't breed with them. And so the actual term coy wolf, I actually know the biologist who's a geneticist as well, who coined that term, and he rues the day that he actually ever said it, because it's caused more misconceptions on what's going on. And so what people confuse that with is the Algonquin wolf. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has deemed the eastern wolf extinct. However, through genetics and changes in time, we do understand now that there is a subspecies of wolf that lives in the eastern Ontario, and so known as the Algonquin wolf. And it does have some common DNA traits with coyotes, but it's ancestral kind of stuff that happened, millions of years ago. And so eastern wolves and what we know as a gray wolf or western gray wolf, they can interbreed, and you will get these remnant coyote genes found. We aren't finding them very often. Like I said, we've looked at that, and there seems to be this gradient as you move further west, the fewer of those genes make it through. The Algonquin wolf is a little bit smaller, or eastern wolf, so there's Canis lupus lacans, and then Canis lupus. So there is some grain of truth there, but it's not what people think. We aren't breeding these super coyotes, and you're seeing these bigger coyotes because of wolf DNA. That's just not happening.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I hear that so much, and it didn't make any sense to me. I'm not a biologist, but to hear you say it, I appreciate that. All right, so let's go back to the UP. How many wolves, and this is a loaded question, how many wolves do we have in the UP?
Well, actually, right now I can't tell you because we are starting our 2026 wolf survey. So that's a winter track survey, and we will do that. Probably this may be the last year we do the the winter track survey as we see it now. So we count wolves every other year. So the last time we did this was 2024. 25 was a moose year, so now we switch back to wolves. And but we're also having another way of estimating wolves. We're looking at that trail camera or occupancy model using trail cameras. So we have a grid system and an array of about 1,300 cameras across the Upper Peninsula that are out there year-round capturing images of wildlife. And so we're looking at another way to estimate the wolf population. And so when we count wolves midwinter, that's the minimum number. That's when wolf population is at its lowest point. And so it doesn't take into account pups and all those kinds of things. However, with cameras that aren't reliant on finding tracks, we could estimate wolves, basically any month of the year. We feel probably August is going to be your high point. Pups are away from dens. They're going to be more mobile, so you're going to get them out, getting pictures taken, those kinds of things. So we're in a multi-year project comparing the two. So this, the 26 winter track survey will be our second comparison with what we're seeing in the cameras. And it's a contract through Michigan State University that's doing the research and developing the model. So we're hoping in the spring we're going to have some early indicators on what's going on with that model as well, and how well does it predict wolf populations in the Upper Peninsula. But the ideas and the numbers that people throw out and I see on social media just are not biologically possible. We just can't have 3,000 wolves in the Upper Peninsula. There's just no way biologically we could have that. And you can do some simple back of the napkin kind of calculations that demonstrate that. I don't know if we have time to go through that, but those kinds of statements are just not realistic. Do we have more than what we said, like 700? As I already said, yes, it's our minimum estimate. It's wolves are at their lowest point. So we don't count every single individual. We have error bars in there. But like I said, jumping to thousands and thousands of wolves, that's just not realistic.
Regardless of what the number is, do we have too many wolves?
That's in the eye of the beholder. That's not a decision I get to make. That's a value judgment kind of question. For some folks, it definitely is yes. Other folks, it's definitely no. So it takes, depends on that perspective, that where you're coming from.
So what is the impact of wolves in the UP? And I'm thinking on deer, and I guess to a lesser degree, maybe wolves. How much do these animals affect the size of those other populations?
Well, that's a complex question, and we could take up the whole show going over that, so, as I said, maybe we need to do an hour-long podcast and we can really delve in that. But in a nutshell, we've looked at this in the Upper Peninsula. We've actually did a multi-year, over 12-year study, spent millions of dollars looking at what are the effects of predators on deer abundance and what is affecting deer abundance in the Upper Peninsula. So, and from that research, we can very easily say conclusively that predators are part of that cycle, or what affects deer abundance. And what I always like to say is wolves are a part of the pie, just not the whole pie. And it really depends. If you really want to put a finger on what is controlling the deer herd in the Upper Peninsula, it's winter weather. That's what's part of, like I said, it's a complex answer, and every part of it plays, whether it's habitat, winter weather, summer weather, fawn survival, adult doe survival. You got bears, you got wolves, you got coyotes, you got bobcats. So all that combines into, a single reason and what's playing the biggest role. And what we found in that research, it really is winter weather. And what I say by that is really the amount of snow that we receive. So if you look at our snow and frequency, because everybody always says, the UP's always had harsh winter, and the deer have always survived. And that is true. We always have had harsh winters. But what has really changed in the last 40 years is the frequency of harsh weather. So we measure that each year, and we look at snow load. How much snow do we have on the landscape? And anytime you get over 12 inches of snow on the level, that's a day that we consider that's severe for deer. And anytime you get up over 90 days in one winter, we consider that a severe winter for deer. So if you look at that frequency from 1986 to 2006, so that 20-year span, 20% of those winters, so 4 of those winters, what we were considered severe for deer. Moving forward, if you look at 2006 all the way up to 2025, 50% of those winters were severe for deer. So that's a drastic change. And folks will say, well, why? Why is that? And really what it is Lake Superior is the water temperature is up. It doesn't freeze the way it used to. And I know this might be a dirty term to some folks, but climate change is having an effect. And so that Lake Superior is one gigantic snowmaking machine for the Upper Peninsula. So when you start putting back-to-back winters, and even since 1996, we've had 3 times as many severe winter weathers, with 3 instances of back-to-back, and actually 2 instances where we've had 3 consecutive severe winters for deer. Just let alone, since 2013, 62% of our winters have been severe for deer. And that's going to have an effect combined with winter habitat. So we combined with summer habitat, combined with predation. Folks just want that easy button. And it's real easy to say wolves, well, wolves eat deer. They're kind of new on the block, relatively, to some people's minds in the Upper Peninsula. They got to be the problem. But, like I said, that's the easy button. It's really a complex interplaying system.
Hang tight, Brian. Listen, I don't mean to interrupt, but I got to take a break here. We're talking with Brian Roell, DNR wildlife biologist, about Michigan wolves in the Upper Peninsula. Brian knows these animals, I think, probably better than anybody. Now, listen, I know if you're in the UP and you've been in the woods, you've had an interaction with wolves, and you do know about wolves. I'm not denying that, but it's Brian's job to work with these animals pretty much all the time. We'll take a break. When we come back, more with Brian Roell of the Michigan DNR, michigan.com/DNR. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Traverse City on WTCM 580 AM. And you can hear us north of the bridge, way north of the bridge, Iron Mountain, WMIQ 1450 AM. We're talking with Brian Roell, who is a DNR wildlife biologist whose primary job these days is to kind of oversee our Michigan wolf population. Brian, you and I were talking a little bit during the break about people's feelings about wolves, people's feelings about the DNR. And a lot of people are not willing to accept what you have to say. Why is that?
That's a darn good question. You look at society and you look at wolves, they're an easy species to hate. It's kind of that folklore that's gone along with the species. And I really see kind of a love them or hate them kind of relationship. There's not a whole lot of people in the middle or on the fence with wolves. But it's kind of what you've been taught over the years. And like I said, folks want that easy scapegoat on why isn't the deer herd doing as well in any given year. And, and wolves, like I said, are an easy target for that.
All right. Why do we not have a wolf hunt in Michigan's Upper Peninsula? You DNR guys are getting in the way of this. I wish you'd step aside and let this happen. But that's not the case, is it?
No, that certainly is not the case. I often say I wish I had the power that people think I have. But, I really don't have any say on whether we have a harvest or not. And it's really not my job to say we should have a harvest or not. I can tell you if you could, but not should. And
well,
that's
who does make that call then?
So in the state of Michigan, obviously right now, they are federally listed as an endangered species. So that part of the decision is out of our hands. We don't have that ability right now. So if wolves are delisted, and I do hear some rumblings on the federal side that there may be some changes coming down the road here. Even if they do change, the DNR still does not have a say on whether they're harvested or not. That relies solely with our Natural Resources Commission or with our legislators. They have the ability to do that. And so that recently changed where the NRC actually had the ability to name animals to the game species. But as you know, the Natural Resources Commission really is the governing body that controls method and manner of take for all game species in Michigan. So they would give us a charge. So if they were to say, DNR, they're not going to say my name, but they're going to say, we would like you to outline what a harvest might look like in the Upper Peninsula. So there are then obviously a lot of steps that we have to go through. And that may not, I guess I said obviously, but it may not be obvious to a lot of people. There are so many nuances with this that what you don't realize. Even just changing our license system so that you can run down the Walmart or the Meijer and buy a wolf tag, that takes us probably about 6 months because there's a contract and a company that runs that system. We just can't call them up and say, hey, we want to add a wolf license to that. So there's a process there. You have to do. We also then have to, because wolves are owned by the citizens of Michigan, we have to have consultation with the citizens of Michigan and find out, have public input. We also have to look at the 12 recognized tribes in Michigan and have those government to government kind of relations and talks about whether we hunt or harvest wolves. We have the biological data. We're good at doing that. We have, the population estimates. We know what kind of mortality rates we're seeing because we have collars. We know how many packs. We know their general distribution in the Upper Peninsula. All those kind of things like that. Yeah, we've got that covered. And so, it's like I said, it's not the DNR that's just deciding here that no, we are going to hunt or no, we aren't going to hunt.
Is there a plan though? If you guys get the go ahead, is there a plan in the works? Would you be ready, or are you working on being ready?
So what I did in 2023 is I outlined with the Natural Resources Commission the steps that would have to occur for us to have a harvest in Michigan. So as far as my understanding is that, and that was a different director at the time, but I know our current director has seen those steps, and I have not been given any charge to make any changes to those steps, that we would have to go through these hoops. So it's going to take us, 9+ months. So if they were, say, delisted tomorrow, we're not going to be able to pull a season together, by this winter. But if they were delisted, say, in the spring or early summer, then we could make those decisions. But it's more important is that the DNR cannot make that decision whether you harvest or not. I only am advising the science and the facts and predicting what the outcome of what a harvest might be. That's what science does. It predicts that outcome, and it looks at the uncertainty and how much uncertainty is there. Is that uncertainty great or is it small? So biologically, we could sustainably harvest some subsection of wolves in there, and that I can back that up with facts. However, like I said, it's not my decision to do that.
Gotcha, Brian. Listen, I gotta let you go. I know you don't like radio because I have set times and I got to get out of this, and I do have to get out of this. And I appreciate the fact that you're in such a high profile spot. A lot of people don't like what you have to say. So coming on here and talking about wolves, I think it's a stand-up thing to do, and I appreciate it, Brian.
No problem. Anytime. Like I said, if you want to delve into any one section more or whatever, just you know how to get a hold of me.
Sounds good. We'll take a break here at the Outdoor Magazine Show. Dixie Dave coming up. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Ludington on News 97, 98, 98.7 WLDN. Just up the coast in Manistee, WMLQ 97.7 FM. And you can hear us on the other side of the state in Saginaw, WSGW AM and FM, 790 AM, 100.5 FM. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now here with the man, the myth, the legend, Charlie Rood. Charlie, appreciate your help. I've had Charlie working hard this hour. See, I recorded some segments ahead of time, so I'm sitting here with my feet up on the desk watching Charlie just sweat. He's running back and forth, pushing buttons, throwing levers. Nice job, Charlie. I appreciate that. Also appreciate the fact that wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar takes time out of his week to talk with me every week, and usually another wild game recipe. Dave's with us once again. David, welcome back, buddy. How are you?
Really good, Mike. And yourself?
I'm doing great. What do you have for us this week?
Are you getting ready for Christmas?
I am getting ready for Christmas. Merry Christmas to you. What do you have for us this week?
Well, we have on page 118, we have a venison steak with capers. So you need it's kind of a involved recipe. So,
so I'm taking notes. Go ahead, buddy.
All right, need about 8 ounces of either leg or loin steak per person. A 12-ounce package of mushrooms sliced thin, 2 to 3 tablespoons, or depending on how much you like capers, how much you want to add to this. 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard, 3/4 of a cup of sour cream, a medium onion diced fine, 2 ounces of Jim Beam, 2 ounces of white wine, Chardonnay, or whatever you're going to drink with this meal would be just fine. And you need a couple of tablespoons of chopped parsley for garnish at the end. Lots of fresh ground black pepper over the meat. 3/4 of a jar of beef gravy. Half a teaspoon of ground cumin, which is kind of a Mideastern spice, and so it gives it a little different flair. Flour to dredge, olive oil, and a couple of tablespoons of garlic butter. So you're gonna grate the black pepper all over the meat, and then you're gonna pound the steaks between 2 pieces of saran wrap with a meat mallet to about 3/8 to a half-inch thick in a hot pan with a small amount of olive oil. Brown the dredged steaks on both sides, then remove to a warm plate. So you just want to caramelize it. So you want to make sure the pan is nice and hot, and so it browns that meat. So it's going to seal in any juice. And then add the diced onions to the pan and saute for a minute or two slowly. And then you're going to move the pan away from the stove and then flambe with Jim Beam away from your stove hood. When the flames die down, then you can add the white wine, the cumin, the gravy, half the parsley, and the capers. And you reduce that by half volume real fast. And then just before you're done, and you're going to put the meat back in, you're going to take that garlic butter and you're going to swirl it in, and that's going to kind of velvetize that sauce and give it a little more flavor and a real nice sheen to it. So after you do that and you got it all dissolved, return the meat back to the sauce. Cook it only to like medium rare, or even rare if you like it. Remove to warm serving plates, and then in the sauce you're going to add the sour cream after it's not boiling. You don't want to be boiling the liquid when you add the sour cream, because it might clabber. It might curdle like a little bit. Spoon sauce over each and top with chopped parsley, and enjoy.
I'm looking right now, Dave, to see if I have the video. I feel like I've got the video.
I believe you do.
Of this recipe.
Yep.
Yeah,
we did this for the TV show.
If I can find this one, I will post it, because I remember this being really kind of a special recipe.
It was.
I got to ask you,
involved, you know.
How did your catering event go last week?
Oh, just fabulous. Everybody was happy.
Well,
they
when you have wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar catering your event, people are going to be happy. That's for sure.
I hope so. That's my game plan.
All right, David, I'm going to let you go. And I know we need to talk off air, so hang tight and I'll talk to you off air. And Merry Christmas to you and Terry and the rest of the family, all right?
Yeah, you too, Michael.
I appreciate that. Talking about Christmas here. One last one last opportunity here to wish you and your family a Merry Christmas. And to please remember that, Christmas it's Santa Claus and it's Rudolph and it's Christmas trees and it's presents, and I get that. And, that is part of our history, our celebration, and the kids need that, and I think maybe we need that as well. But please remember that the reason for Christmas is more than Santa Claus. It's about the birth of a Savior. And in the Christian faith, of which I am a Christian man, it's what this all revolves around. Without the birth of Jesus, there is no Savior, there is no salvation, and this world that we live in can become a very, very dark place. But it's not, because we have faith and we have the birth of Jesus, and we can indeed celebrate Christmas. So that's my wish for you, that you'll keep that in mind as you celebrate this Christmas. Hope you have a wonderful time, get a chance to put your feet up, relax, maybe eat too much, maybe tell some stories, maybe tell some deer hunting lies. And we'll talk to you next time. My name is Mike Avery. This show is called Outdoor Magazine. My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. And my email address is mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Merry Christmas.